Hey guys, welcome to Collapse Times. Feel free to say hi in the chat if you would like to. We'll get right into it tonight. So we made it past the Scorpio new moon. We've made it past the midpoint of Mercury retrograde. I hope everyone is doing okay. Um, I'm still greeting you from under the rock of Saturn, stationing direct on my sun, as I have been talking about for the past couple weeks. It's a very intense transit. I cannot believe how heavy and uninspired I feel. If anyone else has late Pisces personal planet placements, maybe you're feeling something similar. But this week, maybe the load is lightening a little bit for everyone because Saturn is stationing direct and Mercury is stationing direct. So we'll talk about the upcoming astrology a little bit here in a minute. Our main focus tonight will be Marjorie Taylor Greene and her natal chart and transits, which are both very interesting. Very interesting turn of events that she just announced the other day that she's resigning from Congress. Very interesting. Weird times that we're in. Before we get to her, though, I want to talk about a few things. One happy thing is that despite my feeling like I'm being crushed under a rock, finally this channel has 1,000 subscribers. I think it actually has 1,002 subscribers as of right now. So that's really exciting. That's the goal that we've been working towards for a long time. That's the limit where now YouTube will pay me like, fractions of a cent per view, but still it's something. So thank you all so much for being here. And if you're a new person who came to this channel recently, maybe through my Zoran video or maybe through my Epstein videos, welcome. Glad you're here. I wanted to start by talking about the card that came up actually 2 weeks in a row. And this was the Eternal Child archetype card. So it came up for our card pull last week, and it came up the week before also. And last week, I was really feeling heavy last week. I don't think I even read out the description. And I just wasn't like putting pieces together very well. But afterwards, I realized that last week we talked about the Epstein files, the most recent batch of documents that got released. And the week before was the week that actually happened, that this huge batch came out that has all these email exchanges, all these references to Trump, as well as lots of other famous people, mostly people that we knew that Epstein was involved with. So there's not a lot of, shocking, connections or anything that were revealed from the 26,000 pages of documents, but definitely some interesting stuff about the nature of Epstein's relationships with different people. So talked about that a little last time. If you're kind of new to the reality of the Epstein world, I have done a couple other videos that are more like primers about Epstein's life and the whole situation of him, his international connections, etc. So you could look back. I think at least one of them was on one of these live streams, if you want to look at that. But anyway, I just realized that both Trump and Epstein are actually really interesting and also really toxic versions of this eternal child archetype. So I wonder, if that's the energy that was coming forward over these past 2 weeks, if that's why this card came up. So I wanted to just read this again. It also does have, I feel like it points to Sagittarian traits that can be superpowers or can be toxic. And we've got Mars and Sag right now. And, Mercury will be back there, Venus will be in Sag, the sun just moved into Sag. So thought these messages might be worth reiterating about this archetype. So the description says the eternal child is connected to the timeless, ageless, and infinite aspects of life. It is radiant and fearless and seeks joy above all else and at any cost. It struggles being bound to an aging body with physical limitations in a world that demands attention to detail and logistics. It wants to nix all rules and responsibilities and go beyond what others say is possible. And it wants to return with plenty of friends to the land of the free, where divine wine and creativity pour from the earth and sky. We all want to sip from the well of eternal youth, and this makes the eternal child naturally popular, perhaps even famous. It glimmers, it reminds us of what is possible and what is magical about this precious life. So there's another piece actually on this description that mentions the eternal child struggling with addictions and struggling with satiation. And it is actually just interesting to consider Epstein and Trump in the light of this archetype, because first of all, anyone who desires not fully mature people for their sexual partners obviously has a very stunted sexuality of themselves and a general stunted maturity themselves. And Trump and Epstein are also really interesting because both of them don't, or Epstein, assuming that he's actually dead, didn't drink while he was alive. And Trump also doesn't drink. And Trump has his pretty obvious addictions to TV and social media and probably fast food. He's probably addicted to, the various kind of processed chemicals or the sugar that's in fast food. Epstein had actual sex addiction. I feel pretty clear from everything that I've read about him. And he was running this ring and doing this, blackmail work for intelligence agencies, but he also just had his own addiction. And that's my read on why he actually ended up getting caught, why he took it so far that even with all of his intelligence connections, he was ultimately arrested because he just couldn't control himself. I'm totally blanking on that phrase about doing the drugs that you're selling, but sorry, it's a really, really common phrase. I can't think of it right now, but yeah, he just got sloppy because of his own sex addiction. So anyway, this eternal child archetype is interesting to have that card come up 2 weeks in a row when two of the people that are in the news in the biggest way actually are very an extremely polarized to the toxic side version of that archetype. Yeah, and then there is, I'll go ahead and pull up the astrology and we'll just check in with the current astrology a little bit. Because there is also, like I was saying, some interesting Sagittarian energy coming through with the eternal child archetype. So here's where we're at now. The sun just moved into Sagittarius. Mercury and Venus are getting close together. Mercury is retrograding back and Venus is moving forward. Mars is in Sag, the middle of Sag now. So in regards to this card, I'll just also say that the positive sides of this card, the part of the eternal child that is inspired and playful and friendly and expansive and passionate, very fun, likes to party, kind of Dionysian, that Sagittarian energy, maybe we can draw something positive from that, especially with the sun there now. And, just kind of work with a less nasty version of the archetype than the one that we're seeing in the news. But a little bit more about what's going on here. We're kind of checking in with the same energies that we've been checking in with the past 2 weeks in particular. So we've still got this water trine happening with Saturn and Neptune at the end of Pisces, Jupiter at the end of Cancer, and then all the personal planets keep on moving through this third spot at the end of Scorpio, making the grand water trine exact. So a few days ago, the new moon in Scorpio was right there at 28 Scorpio. Mercury is there. The sun just moved through that point. Venus will be moving through that point pretty soon, where they join this water trine. And then at the same time, we have all of those planets also, as they move through, they make an opposition to Uranus. And so the opposition, especially combined with Mercury retrograde, it's kind of a lot. It's kind of intense energy. There's, with an opposition, you get a lot of polarization. So you get a lot of situations where there's kind of like two sides to an issue and they feel like they're tugging in different directions. And you have to somehow leverage that tug of war energy. When the late Scorpio is involved, like this new moon a few days ago, there is, the Scorpio is kind of energy of secrecy or internalization. It holds its cards close to its chest. It's not very overt. It does things much more behind the scenes, much more strategically. And so we have that kind of more internal Scorpio energy. We have Uranus pushing for major changes, pushing for us to be more overt, maybe, or to be more subversive and disruptive in our own lives, and especially the way that we're playing with the polarity, like with the tug of war between the two sides of the chart. There's also this interesting kite formation. I've heard it called a kite. I've also heard it called a basket. I don't know that there's a ton of like really solid, astrological breakdowns of what planets do when they're in this formation, but it's where we've got basically two sextiles. So a sextile between Uranus and Jupiter, a sextile between Uranus and Saturn, a trine between Saturn and Jupiter, and then you've got the point of the kite over here in the late Scorpio. So I don't have too much of a solid breakdown of like what all that means, how they all affect each other, but definitely we see like all the energy flowing to the top point of the kite, which would be these late Scorpio planets. And again, like late Scorpio is just a particular kind of energy. You can say that every energy in the zodiac is intense, but late Scorpio is intense in particular for its ability to confront what is difficult, to confront what is maybe taboo, or to confront what is underneath the surface. So there may be one conversation happening on the surface, but there may be some other dynamics that are playing out underneath, and late Scorpio likes to dig into that. It likes to kind of exist and dance in that world of the subconscious. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of insights that can be gained. But I feel like with all these outer planet energies pushing towards the small personal planets that are here, it feels like this process that's like as the personal planets kind of move through the point, they get this like jolt from Uranus, and it's kind of one jolt after another these days that are, challenging normalcy, challenging tradition or convention. And then the water trine itself, to me, this just really feels like something that's just beginning, even though the alignment itself won't last super long. Like Saturn's going to start moving forward pretty soon. Jupiter's going to be moving backwards. So we're not going to have the water trine activated for too much longer. But I feel like whatever we're doing with this water energy is going to last much longer. And it's like putting a raft into a river, and then you get on the raft and you can, you have some agency over what direction you're going, but you're also being carried by that current of the river in whatever direction the river is flowing. So just think about that. Just be wary about that with all of your actions right now, and also the way that you're choosing to manage your emotions, because when we have all this water energy, we obviously want to let it flow. We don't want to be stifling emotions or suppressing them or avoiding them or dissociating from them. And air signs, fire signs, they're maybe a little bit better at the dissociation. The earth signs, maybe a little bit better at the suppression. Maybe it's okay to do that sometimes, but when we have all this water energy, we really want to let the emotions flow. But I think that there's a difference between letting emotions flow inside of you and the way that you choose to respond to them. So I would just say be cautious about the way that you're responding to emotions, and remember that emotions tend to kind of pass through like a wave, and then the wave kind of dies down. And if you did something, took some big action or said something or whatever, while the wave is like cresting, once that emotion kind of flushes out, once that energy kind of moves on its way, then you can be kind of left wondering, like left kind of stranded, like on high ground, like, wait, why did I do that? How did I end up here? And yeah, again, I just think that whatever we're doing with our emotions right now, and however we're directing that flow of energy, it's just going to keep on flowing that way, like for months. I don't know if there's a particular end point or anything like that, but the flow, it's really whooshing right now. So I'm trying personally to like let it clear shit out from my own being. So just imagining the kind of almost like flash flood energy when there's like a dry creek bed or something, and there's a flash flood and the water just rushes through, and you get, little twigs and branches and dirt and whatever else is there, they all just kind of wash out with that water. So that's what I'm trying to let happen inside of me during the water trine. Ultimately with water, there's just a lot that has to be surrendered to. Agitated air and fire person with Mars and Pisces. Well, a good thing you've at least got a balance of energies. Hope you have a little bit of earth in there somewhere too. All right, so let's go ahead and get into MTG. She definitely has a very interesting chart. Okay, so this is her natal chart. We'll go do a summary of the basics first. So Gemini sun, Leo moon, Sagittarius rising. Already an interesting combination. Also Gemini Mercury, Mars in Cancer, Venus conjunct Chiron in Aries. We've got Saturn in Cancer. We've got the South Node in Gemini. Interesting Jupiter placement here at the bottom of the chart. There's also so many transits happening right now, which we'll talk about in just a second, but like there's Uranus on her descendant. It's in a square to her moon. Jupiter's conjunct her Venus. It's her Chiron return. The North Node is conjunct her Jupiter. Like so many things. All these, the retrograde crossing over her ascendant. Lots of different, pretty direct, impactful things happening for her right now. But yeah, let's talk about the chart a little bit first. So these Gemini placements, I think she might even have a few other Gemini placements too. Nessus is also in Gemini, conjunct her Mercury. Woo. Nessus conjunct her Mercury in Gemini. So like Nessus is about power and abuses of power, and Nessus in Gemini is particularly speaking to abuses of power that happen through the twisting of words and language and stories. So yeah, that's interesting. Lots of Pisces at the bottom of the chart too. That's interesting. I'll say more of my thoughts about that in a minute. But just to start off with the Gemini energy, obviously, when I read celebrity charts, okay, for anybody who is new to this work, not that she's a celebrity, but anyway, when I read the charts of public figures, I'm not reading them cold, right? So I'm reading them based on what I know about the person. And so I'm going to say some things about Gemini that are the shadow of Gemini, but don't take it personally if you're also like somebody with strong Gemini placements, because Marjorie Taylor Greene makes it obvious that she is shadow Gemini. So like, first of all, the Gemini placements, I think, make her susceptible to stories that require mental gymnastics to believe, if she wants to believe them. So there's also this Sagittarian energy in her first house on her ascendant. In general, like Sagittarius wants to believe in something. It wants to have a direction that it's going in terms of, like, not necessarily intellectually, but in terms of faith, in terms of meaning, in terms of philosophy. So some, the shadows of Sag are zealotry, right? Fundamentalism, just like way overdoing it on what you believe, whether that's, an evangelical Christian belief, or whether that's like some new age like guru type of belief system. Whatever it is, Sagittarius like wants to believe in something. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think that she really believed / believes in a lot of the conspiracy theories that she's espoused about the globalist pedophile cabal and the Jewish space lasers and all of that stuff. I think that her Gemini placements and the Nessus in there too, they do make her susceptible to that kind of storytelling, which is so prominent on the internet, on social media. Obviously, she's like gotten these ideas about conspiracy theories from social media. I think there's a lot of grifters out there who talk about that stuff who like don't actually believe it. But I think Marjorie Taylor Greene believes those things, or at least did believe them, like coming into politics and coming into public life. Also, of course, somebody with a lot of Gemini is going to be probably a good speaker, probably a good storyteller, probably, somebody who's able to kind of weave a yarn, or able to, articulate things in ways that get people talking or get people excited. So this is, there's lots of politicians with lots of Gemini energy. And there's usually an ability to lie with Gemini, an ability to lie pretty well. And to kind of like believe in your own self that you're not lying when you're only telling one side of the story, because you can do that mental gymnastics to kind of justify anything. And then combine that Gemini energy with this Leo moon in the 9th house, 29 degrees of Leo. So this placement has a major shadow side of pride and narcissism. And especially with it being in the 9th house, I could imagine that, I don't know if she's thinking about herself this way anymore, and Uranus is transiting her moon. So that may be part of like a shift that's happening. But I can imagine that as she rises to fame And she's rising to fame talking about all these insane conspiracies. Um, you know, people who are into that kind of thing, they tend to have this narcissistic attitude of like, everybody else is sheep, right? But I know the truth. And so I could see her like really getting onto that kind of a high horse with this Leo moon. Getting kind of lost in the stories with all the Gemini, but then it's like the Leo moon that's really like, and I am the leader, or I am a very important leader in the fight to take down the pedophile cabal and, you know, to stop all of these things or whatever. This, you know, I always say a Leo moon likes to save the day, and I love a Leo moon. I have had multiple lovely Leo moons in my life, and I feel like it can be a very noble placement and a very courageous placement, but obviously that can get out of hand. And again, especially with it being in the ninth, this moon just like really wants to be the hero of the story, and it really wants to be the leader and the teacher and the guru and the one who has more wisdom, and it really wants to be recognized in that way. So I could see this moon just like really, really getting off on all of the responses that she would get saying crazy shit on Twitter or whatever over these past several years. Let's see. Okay, there's so much to talk about with the transits, so I think I'll just go over there. And I guess I didn't really give the summary. I don't know if anybody doesn't realize that Marjorie Taylor Greene posted a couple of days ago, I think it was like at the Scorpio new moon, that she is resigning from Congress. And so it's like a 10-minute video that you can watch on X or Twitter. And it's not very subversive. She really just kind of like, she talks herself up and she bitches about Trump. And then she has like one line about how like we should be America first or whatever, but it's not like she actually like, you know, calls out Israel, for example, in her video where she's resigning, even though she has interestingly, explicitly, right, like talked about how she's here to be America first, and how she's had to like do so many votes that just have to do with Israel. I forget, but she's like made some explicit statements on Twitter before about how she has been learning how much America is devoted to Israel. But anyway, she doesn't say anything about that in this like 10-minute statement. It's just, yeah, it's not very like punchy. It's not very in your face, but it is interesting. It is pretty like big deal that she would decide to just resign. So I do feel like even without knowing the exact story, we can see some really interesting pieces of that decision in her transits. So like I was saying before, Uranus is crossing her descendant and squaring her moon. That transit has been happening since middle of 2025, and then will complete March, April of 2026. So that's one like pretty, you know, revolutionary transit, especially the square to the moon. And you know, in one way or another, Uranus is challenging this moon that, you know, maybe the part of her chart that really like grabbed the reins and like was like, let's go on this adventure to the heights of political power because we are so awesome. And I'll say a little bit more in a second about maybe some my suspicion of what the radicalization process has been for her. But also Jupiter stationing conjunct her Mars at the time she makes this announcement. Her Chiron return. Let's actually see exactly when her Chiron return is, because that has also been happening all the way since 2024, actually. Yeah, so her Chiron return started in June of 2024, and it lasts all the way until January of 2026. And then she also has Chiron conjunct her Venus coming up, and that lasts until 2027. So the Chiron return, for anyone who doesn't know, it happens age like 50, 51, 52, when Chiron comes back around for its first time to the place that it was when you were born. And it is, from what I have observed from clients who have been through this transit, it's usually a really healing experience. It's usually sort of a, for anybody who works as a healer in any sort of way at all, whether you use that word or not, but if you're working in a way maybe with the vulnerable, or if you're working in a way that is in one way or another, inviting healing for people, then the Chiron return a lot of times is kind of an initiation into a new level of yourself as a healer. And / teacher, guide, mentor, those are also part of Chiron's archetype. The Chiron return is also, for women, it's kind of like the initiation into the crone phase. In general, it is kind of crossing a threshold into elderhood. So for Marjorie Taylor Greene, so my theory with like, especially all four maybe of these major transits, Chiron return, Uranus square, descendant, Jupiter, and the nodes, the North Node down here in her fourth house. My theory with all of this is, it actually is just basically what she said in her resignation video, that she wants to spend more time with her family. But like, literally, I think that's it. Like, I think she's like tired of the intensity of the political scene and the political game. I think that's probably one layer of it. And, she talks a lot in the resignation video about how whatever she, wants to be of service, and she's always wanted to be of service, and she cares so much about her beloved constituents and blah, 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 blah. And, she, I don't think that she ever really cared about being of service. I think it was just the recognition that this moon was getting more than anything else that took her in the direction of politics. But I think that she probably at this point has burnt out on the recognition, maybe too much of that. It's not a novelty anymore. It's maybe not thrilling anymore. It doesn't give the same dopamine hits anymore. And also, I am sure that this Pluto or Uranus squaring the moon process in particular, whether she's conscious of it or not, like, this does relate to her awakenings about Israel, but also just her general awakenings about the reality of American politics. And like, I think that that's pretty radicalizing. She may not be totally conscious of it, but she probably did have this kind of experience of like thinking she's going into, Congress to fight the big bad global pedophile cabal. And like, it's just becoming less and less deniable, like, who the pedophile cabal is. She also kind of bitched about Trump, and I'm going to pull up Trump's astrology in a second because they have so much overlap. It's hilarious. But like, that piece, I think, probably corresponds to this Uranus square, like this radical awakening about the realities of the political world. And it's not that she's like so morally upright that she would, be so shocked and just turn away from that or whatever. But it's more that it's like kind of humiliating, right? And kind of humbling to have believed this like fantastical kind of story that you thought you were the hero of. Again, the Leo moon, it really wants to be the hero of the story. and you like move into that space thinking you're the hero, and as things unfold, as tranches of documents get released, it becomes super clear that like the people you think you're trying to save are like the evil people. So I also think though, so I think that is a part of it, but I think that her wanting to like spend more time with her family, the transits make me think that that's probably also like really legit. But and maybe there's like family issues, and I see there's stuff in the chat. I'm gonna check it in just a second. But the Chiron return in her fifth house, she has 3 kids. Chiron return also is, it is, even though it isn't up leveling or an initiation, generally Chiron transits are kind of woundy. They make us feel very tender. They humble us. They sometimes, make us see things about ourselves that make us feel kind of guilty or dumb or ashamed or whatever. So the 5th house being related to children and to parenting, I wonder if the Chiron return has some themes for her around how she's showing up for her children. A lot of Gemini in the 7th house and the 8th house planets. I'm curious about her marriage. I haven't done any research on her, so I don't know anything about her social situation. I wouldn't be at all surprised if she's like a swinger, if her and her husband are part of some like elite Georgia swinging network. I wouldn't be surprised if there are addiction issues with Jupiter and Pisces in the 4th house, and all the Pisces, right? She has actually a ton of Pisces at the bottom of the chart. Pholus also, like Pholus, the mythology explicitly connects to alcohol, and Pholus and Pisces especially. Pholus is an energy of something that can kind of, it's like a genie out of the bottle energy. So it's like where you open the bag of chips and you eat the whole bag, or you open the 6-pack and you drink the whole thing, or whatever. Ceres, Juno. This is really interesting configuration at the bottom of her chart. Lots of kind of deep-seated attachment issues, and with Juno, there's jealousy issues, fidelity stuff. I haven't researched at all, so I have no idea what this is referring to in her life, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's like kind of an turbulent situation in her marriage and her home life in general. She seems like that kind of person. The Leo moon, really hard to handle in any kind of relationship, probably. And so I also think that because we also have Uranus crossing her descendant, right? So this is also activating stuff to do with like her partnership. So I do wonder just if things are like funky or difficult at home for her, and they have been for a while, and if that is also a reason why she's making this change. Oh, the last thing I'll say before I check the chat on my notes, she has the nodes right at her MCIC axis. So the south node is coming close to crossing her midheaven, and the south node, when the south node crosses somewhere in the chart, it usually asks us to like shed a layer of skin. So south node crossing the midheaven can often be the experience of quitting a job, losing a layer of your professional identity, or shedding a layer, ending a project, or, ending a professional trajectory that you've been on. Sometimes I find South Node transits are also the start of something new, and they kind of like bring your new karmic timelines in. But with her, this just makes sense that it would correspond to her leaving this layer of her professional life behind. And I guess it was 2 years ago now that AOC, who has Libra on the midheaven, she had the South Node coming towards her midheaven. And I was looking at that. It was like right after the genocide had started. And you know, she was doing her really uncomfortable, wishy-washy thing about it that a lot of us were like, whoa, that's not what I expected. But also, I guess that only happened if you hadn't been paying attention before. So anyway, I predicted that she would leave Congress and that she would, take herself in a new direction, because there's obviously like things that she could do with her following. Like she could go into media, she could do kind of anything, right? She could write a book, she could do a podcast, she could tour, she could be successful at a lot of things that aren't politics. So when she had the South Node crossing her midheaven, I thought that would be what happened, but that was not what happened actually. And I feel like what did happen is that the layer that like cleared off was sort of like the facade of her as like a, genuinely like, person with integrity who was trying to make the world better. And then what it revealed was her like careerist nature. So anyway, little tangent there, but yeah, that's just interesting that MTG has this transit coming as she is leaving. Okay, let me pop over to the chat here. Oh, Dora, you have Gemini Sun and Leo Moon too. Interesting. Yeah, so Chiron has a very, very elliptical orbit. And so it stays in some signs for a really short time and other signs for a long time. And I think that Aries and Pisces and maybe Taurus also are the signs that it's in for the longest time. So it really has, because my Venus is at 22 Aries and Chiron has been there for ages. Like usually, so Pluto in particular moves so slow that its movement a lot of times is like 3 steps forward and then 2 steps back. And that's why it'll hit the same point in the chart sometimes 5 times. And that's the case with Chiron at this particular degree. I don't think it's that way with Chiron too many other places, but maybe just even in Aries, like right around this like 22 degrees, it just goes so slow. Yeah, so Marjorie Taylor Greene announced that she is resigning immediately. She said her last day is going to be January 5th. AOC thinks Marjorie Taylor Greene timed her resigning to a few days after her pension kicked in after making millions. Well, that is probably true. I don't know anything about the pension. I'm sure she's made millions in insider trading, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's some financial timing with all of that. MTG, oh, not married. What? Really? I could have sworn she said something about her. She definitely mentioned her kids in her video, but maybe she didn't mention in her. I guess maybe obviously she didn't mention if she started dating someone in 2023. Ooh, interesting. I guess she probably keeps that on the down low, and probably, those Gemini placements like talk their way around it, because as a like typical MAGA conservative woman, like you really want to have a man, right? Doesn't look very good for you really if you don't have that traditional situation going on, and especially if you have kids, because I'm like 90% sure she mentioned having 3 kids. Okay, let's see if I missed anything that I wanted to say. Well, okay, so a couple things I didn't talk about yet in this chart, and then we'll just look at her and Trump together real fast. Yeah, I don't know exactly what to make of this transit. Jupiter conjunct her Mars in Cancer. I think without being somebody who like knows technically about financial astrology, if you're talking about like insider trading, I feel like that's the kind of thing that can be in the 8th house. It's maybe in the 8th house or the 5th house. The stock market, I find, often falls in the fifth house, especially kind of the nature of the stock market that's like a gambling parlor, it's like a game, or it's like recreation or whatever. That piece is in the fifth house. But when you're talking about insider trading, you're maybe talking more about the eighth house. So that might make a lot of sense, actually, that like Jupiter hanging out conjunct her Mars in the eighth house could be a time when there's, you know, some financial abundance coming to her. This also just kind of emphasizes the family theme to me, and or a theme of being home, wanting to be home. Typically Mars in Cancer is very much a homebody, and doesn't love to be like out in the world all the time. So it may have been, you know, her political career, like the Leo moon loves it, the Gemini loves it, the Sag rising loves it, but like Mars in Cancer may not have loved it so much. Also in the eighth house, like if there are relational difficulties, if there's difficulties, you know, maybe lack of sex drive or something like that, that could fall in the eighth house if that kind of stuff is one of the reasons under the surface of why she's making this choice. I have seen recently multiple people with like late Cancer placements who are having this Jupiter station on their late Cancer placements, and it's like not a fun experience. It's like too much energy to deal with, or too much kind of like flooding or overflow of emotions. So she might have experienced something like that too. Yeah, and then it is interesting. She did do the resignation like right at the Leo new moon, maybe the day, or sorry, the Scorpio new moon, maybe it was the day after. But that happened in her 12th house, squaring her natal moon. And that resonates with, you know, the new moon as a start over point, shifting, being a time of her shifting who she wants to be seen as publicly, which can speak to this Leo moon up at the top, and it can also speak to the Sagittarius ascendant right next to where the new moon happened. So yeah, I would guess, I mean, the stuff about the pension and the insider trading, no doubt. I believe that for sure. Yeah, and I would just also guess that there is a component of Uranus squaring the natal moon that is about her own radicalization and her own relationship to the political world and what she's learned. And yeah, there's the themes of home and parenting and family, like they're here. So I feel like that is a piece of it as well. Yeah, so for fun, let's just look at these two charts together, because this is just so fascinating, and it's fascinating to me that they kind of fell out or whatever. I've said on here before how like Trump and Vance have super similar astrology, and like I just think that they like don't get along at all, and that could just easily be the case with Trump and MTG too, because they just have too much that's similar. Like they kind of bounce off each other. So it's really pretty crazy if you guys are looking at this. So like this, so we've got Trump on the outside here. Trump has his sun North Node Uranus conjunction in Gemini, conjunct like pretty much here with this whole stellium of South Node Nessus and Mercury that Marjorie Taylor Greene has. Hardcore Gemini. The Cancer placements also are overlapping pretty directly. Trump's Cancer Mercury is conjunct her Saturn, and Trump's Saturn Venus conjunction in late Cancer is conjunct Marjorie Taylor Greene's Mars. Then we've got Trump's Mars conjunct her moon. Then we've got their nodes are almost exactly the same except opposite. Trump has his north node at 19 Sag, and this is her, sorry. Marjorie Taylor Greene's north node at 19 Sag, and then Trump has his moon south node conjunction in that same alignment. So, and then this is not exactly a conjunction, but this, if I switch it real quick, I've talked about these Libra placements in Trump's second house being related to his vanity, the way that he looks, the kind of cringe way that he looks. So she's got some overlap with that too. Oh, look at that. Marjorie Taylor Greene has Pluto conjunct Vesta, which I also have in my 12th house in Scorpio, and I consider it one of my superpowers. But what does that mean for her? That's interesting. It's in her 10th house. Oh my gosh. That's interesting. I have to think more about that before I say anything specific though. Yeah, but I mean, these overlaps are a little bit crazy, right? Seeing if I missed any squares or oppositions or trines in there between them, but it's like mostly just all these conjunctions. And a Chiron and Venus here also are in a square to Mars in Marjorie Taylor Greene's chart. Yeah, so with just so much in common, and then especially when you have the fire energies, they really kind of go at each other. They really kind of bounce off each other. When you have so much Gemini, it also is just not surprising that like this could end up as two people who like don't agree with each other. And then, yeah, just like a lot of Leo. So just a lot of pride, a lot of narcissism, a lot of inability to like extend awareness out from beyond the individual self. And when you have multiple people with that kind of characteristic, seems pretty obvious like that they wouldn't get along. So I think I covered everything in her chart that I wanted to talk about. Just thought that would be a fun little thing to look at today. And we'll go ahead and finish up here with a couple cards for next week. And I'm going to try to, it's the simplest thing for me to take a picture of the cards and post them, and somehow it has seemed so difficult, but we'll try again this week. So let's get an archetype card and an alchemy card for the coming week. I didn't really look closely at like what we've got coming. What have we got coming up this week? Well, I did mention we've got Mercury stationing direct on Saturday. I think I'll probably do a members only live stream, a little Mercury station ceremony on Saturday. So if you're a member, if you're a channel member, check out or like keep an eye out for an announcement about that. So Mercury stations on Saturday, Saturn stations on Thursday. That's a big deal. That's exciting. When are Venus and Mercury going to be exactly conjunct? Looks like that's tomorrow. It's a kind of a fortuitous alignment, Venus and Mercury conjunct. There can be sometimes it's a good time to like address a delicate subject when Venus and Mercury are conjunct. Good time to get kind of insight into relationships. However, with Mercury still retrograde, always good to be cautious about not believing everything you hear or knowing that there's probably information missing from, in any situation where you're trying to kind of like evaluate or like get clear about the whole picture. Yeah, that might be the main things going on this week. Okay, let's get a couple of cards. What do we need to know for this week? Spirit, Okay, we have our archetype card is the Mirror. Our alchemy card is Antimony. I'll read this out loud. Let's see, we'll start with Antimony. So the keywords are wildness, fierceness, and hunger. In medieval times, antimony became known as the gray wolf of alchemy. This was due to the metalloid's unpredictable qualities and its ability to eat away at materials in the laboratory. Gold is one of the few materials to withstand contact with it. For these reasons, this card must be read with delicacy. On one hand, it represents the wild and free spirit that longs to express itself in the world. On the other hand, it represents a fierceness that can turn destructive or corrosive at the drop of a hat. The message here is clear. Channel the gray wolf's energy toward creativity. Challenge it to come out from the shadows and express itself. Embark on the creative project or adventure that's calling you rather than focusing on why you can't. Once you begin, don't quit. The gray wolf responds to respect, not repression. The gray wolf can easily be felt through the laboratory of the human body. Dance, run, shake, breathe. And another interpretation of this material is that something is eating away or wearing away at the situation or person. Let this possibility open to deeper revelation. And the Mirror the reflection, the illusion, the looking glass. We look into mirrors every day without recognizing them as portals into another realm. They can shatter, flatter, distort, reflect, and project an image back to us that we deem to be true. The energy of the mirror is all about self-perception. When the archetype of the mirror appears, we are in the mythic land of Narcissus, who saw himself reflected in a pool and fell in love with his own image. So compelled by his reflection, he could not turn away, a fixation that eventually led to his death. Recognize the power and danger of the mirror. It is a construct, one that may drive a shard between you and your true self. The mirror contains trickster energy. Put the phone down, stop with the comparisons, and let the mirror stand empty for a while. Rest with the one inside. Speak to yourself kindly and gently in the mirror, even if it feels awkward at first. Okay. Well, some of y'all might remember a while ago, I talked about the concept in alchemy of the green lion eating the sun. And in that concept, corrosion comes up a lot. You can look back. There's a video, a live stream that I did where I talked about that. I did it right after there was an eclipse, new moon eclipse in Virgo, I think, that was directly opposite Neptune. And it kind of felt to me like that eclipse, created this like vomit out of like Neptune Pisces kind of energy, which I was thinking about it being corrosive, and I was like working that card, the green lion and the sun was coming up for me a lot. So anyway, this card, some pieces of the message are also about corrosion, right? And creativity. And so it makes me think of Saturn and Neptune at the end of Pisces, and Saturn stationing direct, and that, because Pisces energy definitely needs to be channeled towards creativity. That's one really good way, an important way to channel that kind of oceanic flow. And there's also this interesting corrosive nature to the ocean, both the fact of like waves just wearing away something over time with the repeat of the water, but they're also the salty, kind of astringent nature is also corrosive. So yeah, perhaps there's a reference to Saturn stationing direct in Pisces and maybe feeling a little bit more empowered to channel Piscean energy in a way that feels productive or healthy, and isn't just escaping or numbing or just kind of avoiding the potentially difficult nature of that energy. And then really both of these cards, one of them, I already forget which one of the descriptions used the word trickster, but really both of these cards have some trickster energy to them. I think it was the mirror card that used the word trickster, but like this card actually has the Uranus glyph on it. It has Venus upside down, unless that's a different glyph that I don't know about. I don't know what that means, but yeah, I feel like that there's also this reference in both of these cards to the trickster energies, which are super present, I feel like, with Mercury being retrograde and with these planets one after another going through the Uranus opposition. So yeah, perhaps be on the lookout for that. And the message from the mirror card, it kind of seems to be like, you don't need to look in the mirror. Let the mirror be empty for a little while. So that might also be good advice for like these final days of Mercury retrograde. Like maybe try to take off the, I don't know, like, I was going to say like try to take off the like introspective hat. But that seems like really weird advice for the end of Mercury retrograde. So I don't know, but maybe there's some kind of trickstery, confusing, caught in the mind, right, kind of way of operating that the mirror card might be reflecting to us, that we could do something different around that. All right. I think that's it for tonight. Yeah, I hope that the cards are helpful. And I don't know, I actually even had a little bit to say about those. So maybe that'll give me more motivation to actually take a picture of them and post them. But yeah, I'll be back next week. If I feel inspired to talk about something, I might take a holiday break if I don't have any inspiration. I pretty much always have inspiration, but then these past few weeks I've just had no inspiration and it's been like a drag to figure out what I want to talk about on these Sunday night live streams. So we'll see. If there's nothing coming and I need a break, I'll just take a break. But yeah, channel members, keep an eye out. I'll post something tomorrow or Tuesday about a little live Mercury station direct ceremony that we'll do on Saturday, because that station actually happens at a like doable time. I think it's at like 12:30 Eastern time. So I'll figure out the exact time, but we'll do something that you could do together with me live if you want to be in ceremony, or you could do it later. And if you are not a channel member and you would like to support this channel, becoming a channel member is an amazing way to do that. It is only $2.99 a month, and there's just going to keep being great perks for members as much as I can. Also, if you are not on my email list and you want to be, there's a link in the description box for that. And it's the link that says ebook, because you also get a free copy of Astrology for Apocalypse, my now retrospective ebook about outer planet transits. And I do New Year readings, and they are my most popular reading, except for maybe past life readings that I offer at eclipse season. But I've kicked those off. They're called roadmap readings, and I just did a super early bird sale last week or 2 weeks ago or something, but there will be another sale on those readings coming up. Maybe I might do it like Black Friday, or I might do it the week after. But if you're interested in that, get on my email list so you hear about those readings when they are announced. It's a pretty cool format. I really love it. And a lot of people also seem to really love it because there's a lot of repeat customers from these readings. But it's a close to an hour. It's like 50 to 60 minutes recorded reading, so it's not live. I record half of it is your astrology for the year, so like how the retrogrades and eclipses and other long-term transits are impacting your natal chart. And then I have a spread using tarot and oracle cards that gives you a set of cards for each season of the year. And then I break down the cards and the season and weave in the astrology. So it's a really comprehensive reading. And I have had more reflections than I can count from people of how accurate the readings are. And from my own experience, I've done the same spread for myself 5 years in a row now. Super accurate, crazily accurate. So yeah, if you want to know, if you want your roadmap for 2026, if you're interested in that, be sure that you're on my email list. All right, and we'll finish here. I'll get back to the songs sometime when I've got inspiration again. I haven't been playing guitar at all. I've just been, all my finger muscles are atrophied, no calluses on my fingers. So we'll get back to that when Saturn moves off of my sun, probably. All right. Many blessings, my friends. Thank you for being here. Always let me know in the comments or email me, collapseastrology@gmail.com, if you want me to talk about something specific on these live streams. If you have an idea for someone whose chart I should check out, or, you know, some astrology that might be interesting to look at, history as well. Somebody recommended last time that I look at the New York Stock Exchange chart, and I didn't do that. I'm actually just going to make a note to do that real quick. But yeah, I would love suggestions on that stuff. All right. Happy new week. I hope that your Saturn station and your Mercury station feel good. And, you know, happy Thanksgiving for those who celebrate. Not me. I fucking hate Thanksgiving, but you know. Yes, that was you, Audra. Yes, thank you for that recommendation. I definitely will do that. All right. Lots of love, my friends.